I mean, we're seeing right now, God is creating a situation where people get to decide for themselves which side they're going to stand on, light or darkness. That's what's happening.
All of us right now are under attack, and Israel just happens to be on the front lines. And if the world doesn't wake up soon, they're going to wake up with Hamas in their backyard.
I think a lot of this is happening in order to wake us up to who we are and what our story is. So why are we talking about occupying Gaza, liberating Gaza, and declaring sovereignty over the biblical homeland of Gaza within the nation of Israel? That's it.
Welcome to the Israel Guys, where we believe that in a world of anti-Israel propaganda and Jew hatred, you should always be connected to the land and to the people of Israel. So happy to be back all together with week. Rabbi Jeremy Gimpel, R.A. Rabbi R.A. Bramwitz, Joshua Waller. Good to be with you guys. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you don't miss out. The channel is growing and expanding. We're happy to be with you every single week. So much happening, as always. It's never a dull moment, never a dull week in the Middle East. And there is just, now there's speculation now. Is Israel going to occupy Gaza, whatever that means, right?
Liberate Gaza.
And I think we should start there. We're going to get into more later on, including the third highest leader in America visiting the West Bank, the Judea and Samaria. And I mean, that's something that cannot be ignored, and so much more. But I think we should start with this place because according to the Jerusalem Post, the security cabinet in Israel is set to meet today. So by the time you guys watch this, there may be a decision. You can watch the news. Watch out for breaking headlines. But to meet today, and they're expected to approve some sort of plan that include occupying new portions of the enclave. Ari, you were talking about before we started recording about how you feel like sometimes the language that is said by either by the government or by just Israeli media kind of affirms the narrative, the anti-Israel narrative.
It's
Do you want to talk about that?
They're spoon feeding it to the enemies of Israel. I've always been a stickler to almost a crazy degree when it comes to words, but I think words, this is a war of ideas that we're fighting. It's a spiritual war. And the words that we use are of critical importance. You can surrender the entire war by just saying Palestinians. Right? What is Palestinians? Where is Palestine? If you're saying they're Palestinians, then there's a Palestine. What is this nation of Palestine that these indigenous people have come from? You're already throwing in the white flag. Right. And so for them to say about Gaza, which is actually historically and biblically belongs to the nation of Israel, we liberated it in a defensive war. And not only that, we ethnically transferred out Jews, an entire 8,000 Jews that were in the Gush Katif, ethnically trying to hand it to them. And now we're hearing from all of the world that we allowed October 7th to happen as a pretext so we could take it back. We gave it to them. Like, the whole thing is so absurd. Why can't we just understand the truth of our narrative? When people say, Ari, you're from Texas. I'm not from Texas. I was born in Texas because of the destruction of the temple and the exile of the Jewish people around the world. I was born there, but I'm from Judea. If we don't know who we are and what our story is, and I think a lot of this is happening in order to wake us up to who we are and what our story is. So why are we talking about occupying Gaza, liberating Gaza, and declaring sovereignty over the biblical homeland of Gaza within the nation of Israel?
Well, I think that's the real problem, is that the government isn't saying that. They're not saying we're now going to annex parts of Gaza. We're going to declare sovereignty over parts of Gaza. We're going to restore Israeli sovereignty.
They're actually describing occupation.
Yeah, they're saying we're just going to go there, conquer it all, and we don't really know what we're going to do there. We're just going to occupy it. We're just going to be there. And that's really
so the narrative
war
we're talking about here is a war where it seems like the narrative is being defined by places like Al Jazeera or Haaretz, the leftist of the leftist, the most jihadic kind of places where people are getting their ideology from these absolute haters of Israel. It seems like when you use words, or you mentioned the occupied or the occupation or the illegal settlements, and the list could go on, West Bank. These are the mainstay words that have been used all throughout this war in Gaza, and have been used really for the last 50, 60 years, even since 1967 and before. When the Palestinian Liberation Movement was started in 1964, they began not a campaign of truth and of factual content and truth. It was a complete ideological battle to change the narrative. And they really have been very successful. You got to give it to them. They have been very, very
Well, now
successful.
it's not just the woke left, which says that all nationalism is bad. Well, except for the Palestinian nationalism that we really have to support. It's also now from the woke right that says that like nationalism is great, except for that country, Israel.
Yeah.
It's like it's coming from both sides now. And the only way to combat it is with truth. It's just by sticking to the truth, because ultimately the truth will emerge, because that truth is reality. And if we don't hold by the truth and speak the truth and use the correct language, we've already lost.
It's amazing how you can just flip everything on its head. You know, the biggest colonization in the world right now is probably the Islamic one that's going across the world and taking over cities and states and countries. Look at France, for example, completely being overrun by jihadists, right? The religion. But yet, that's not the story you're hearing. You're hearing about this country, Israel, that's coming back to its ancient roots and coming when Speaker Mike Johnson, we'll talk about it more later, but this is just hysterical to me that when he visits the ancient town of Shiloh, the Al Jazeera quote is, Johnson becomes the highest ranking U.S. official to visit the illegal settlement in the occupied Palestinian territory. Who's the colonizer? Who's the occupier? They've literally flipped the whole thing on its head. The biggest occupation in the entire world.
Well, the funny thing is a lot of the Arab towns, the names in Arabic are like a derivative of the original Jewish town that was there.
Yeah, but
that's actually, archaeologists say, like, that's how you even know that there was a Jewish town there, is because the Arab town that was built later was named after the original Jewish town.
But you got to give it to Speaker Johnson going to Shiloh is amazing. And the fact that it has so much, obviously, even in the Al Jazeera headlines, it just says illegal Jewish. They can't say where it was because that just so discredits them. If you say Speaker Johnson went to Shiloh, where the tabernacle rested for 369 years, and Jewish presence has been consistent throughout the entire Jewish history for thousands of years. Well, but that just doesn't work with the argument very well. That's a really a needle in a balloon of their whole ideology, this whole figment of this creation that they have infused, this really a cancerous ideology to the whole world that is bent on demonizing and delegitimizing the whole Zionist, incredible prophesied biblical movement of Jews coming back into the land.
And I think it's also a demand, a divine call for character.
Yeah.
Really to determine, are you Abrahamic? Abraham was a Hebrew and Ivri. He stood on one side, the rest of the world on the other. You know, I think Israel, we're looking around right now at countries and nations that once we really did think were maybe not the greatest of friends, but at least allies on a political front. And they're turning against us and saying that they're going to vote for a Palestinian state in the United Nations this coming September. And we're like, a vote for a Palestinian state is a vote for the destruction of Israel, period, end of story. And now all of these friends and allies that are turning against us, and there's this small, tiny remnant that is still standing with us, that is standing true, that is standing resolute, that is standing stronger than ever. You guys are, I think, the leaders of this movement of or one of the leaders of the movement of the remnant of the nations. But it's not just standing with us, but also ideologically. You have to be willing to stand against what the whole world is saying. You know, you watch CNN, they always use that argument. Yeah, but the majority, there were 72 Israeli officers that came together. And there's always this numbers thing. Everybody is saying, the international community is saying, what about truth?
Right.
You know, it's okay if the whole world is saying that. If it's not true, it's not true. We're going to speak with character and integrity, and that's what's being demanded of us.
What's amazing is that in this week's Torah portion, it literally says God chose Israel not because we are the most of all nations, but because we're the fewest and smallest of all nations. Yeah. And so what's lining up right now is that all of the nations are lining up against Israel, and there will be a small David against a massive Goliath. And that's really what's unfolding before our very eyes. And the truth will set us free. As long as we stay true to what we know is true, the truth will set us free.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I was just before the show, I came in and as I often do, I'm like, hey guys, look at this Candace Owens video. Look at this Tucker Carlson video. And look what'd you say?
You're not supposed to say those names anymore.
Right, well, that's what you were saying. But Luke, what was your argument?
Well, I'm like, I think like all of us, I'm sick and tired of it, but I'm also a little bit like, it's hard to not see what like the latest.
It's hard to not.
That's
right, but no, but you said that and I was like, something resonated in me that, you know, this week's Torah portion, we do believe that the Torah portion is a prism, a light into what's happening in our lives on personal and national levels. And Moses stood there on the mountains of Moab, gazing yearningly into the land. and he wasn't allowed to enter the land, but he had this deep desire. And so one of the reasons the sages give that he wasn't able to enter the land is because whatever Moses touched was eternal. And if he was the one to go into the land and build the temple, it would have never been able to be destroyed. And part of the journey we needed to go through as the Israelites throughout history was to have our temple destroyed, be exiled around the world. So he couldn't be that one. But that yearning in his heart, that was eternal. That yearning has been passed on, and we need to be kindling that. We need to be shining a light of beauty and inspiration and truth and yearning. And those that have that antenna, that radar that picks up on truth will be lit up by that. And it's not up to us to determine if numbers. It's not about numbers.
We'll be back with the rest of the podcast in a second. But first, I want to give you something practical that you can do to support the land and the people of Israel. If you're like a lot of people I know and you love Israel, but you aren't able to come here to the Holy Land, or if you're inspired by the Jewish families living out God's promises on the front lines, or if you simply want to walk out God's words to Abraham in Genesis 12, a blessing the nation of Israel, you should check out our friends at Blessed by Israel. What these guys do is they bring the amazing products from family-owned businesses in the biblical heartland to people all over the world. From the land of Israel straight to your doorstep, you can enjoy awesome products such as extra virgin olive oil, coffee roasted to perfection by Agro Cafe. I drink this stuff every single day, multiple times a day. Delicious raw honey, jewelry, organic spices, handcrafted ceramics, and much, much, much more. All of these products are from wonderful small family-owned businesses in Israel, a majority of them in Israel's heartland. You can be a part of encouraging and investing in the people of Israel and enjoy high-quality products at the same time. Head over to blessedbyisrael.com. That's blessedbyisrael.com to purchase beautiful boutique products and make your impact today. You can even use the code INVEST for $5 off your first order at blessedbyisrael.com. That's blessedbyisrael.com, or click the link in the description below. Now, back to the podcast. I think that's why every week, like, we try, because it's so easy. Like, we could just sit here and talk for 3 hours about the horrible things that are happening and the lies and the propaganda. But like every week we make a concerted effort to bring the positivity, to bring the encouragement, to bring the Torah portions, to bring the what God's doing in the land of Israel. And we have to do that because, like you're saying, that like we have to focus on the eternal. And God's doing amazing things in the land of Israel, and we can't ignore it. We have to open our eyes, or else we're like the spies, and we cannot. We can't believe the lies of the spies. And
that's why we're talking about Gaza, because we see a really great end story there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I want to get back to before we get too deep, I want to get back to just like what is happening right now there. So let me just read a couple of quotes for you. J-Post is reporting that the plan that the Security Cabinet is probably voting on today involves around 5 IDF divisions. They're saying it'll last approximately 5 months.
This occupation
focused on, so J-Post is saying it's focused, or I can't remember, maybe it's Times of Israel, is focused on Gaza City, central Israel. The Arabs in Gaza would be pushed toward the south. Another quote from JNS is saying Netanyahu is considering ordering the IDF to occupy the entire Gaza territory, up from the roughly 3/4 it currently controls. So a lot of questions as to what actually will happen, what will be approved. Times of Israel is quoting, I think it's a U.S. representative that was visiting, saying Netanyahu told him he has no interest in a long-term stay in Gaza. I'm going to try and avoid using this word occupation, even though that's what everybody is saying.
Even the prime minister himself used the word occupation.
Right, yeah. But so not clear exactly what's going on. You were talking about the chief of staff, General Eyal Zamir. They're saying he is very opposed to a plan to expanding operations in Gaza, but they're saying he's not going to resign over this.
Right. I didn't want to personally by name call out Jeremy for his overwhelming optimism when Zamir became, the head of the IDF, because Jeremy, he said he put a wonderful letter in the Western Wall, and we're so wanting to finally have leaders that see the truth, the historical greater picture of what's really happening here, who have courage and character and willingness to do what needs to be done for the nation of Israel. And so he was optimistic. Jeremy, you were optimistic when you saw the letter he put on the Kotel.
I was optimistic and I was wrong. The fact that Israel has become so dysfunctional. Imagine if President Trump and the American government were to say, it's time to attack Iran. And the chief of staff would be like, nope, we're not doing it.
If it sounded like a coup, it's a coup.
What example is that setting for every other soldier in the IDF? It's like, well, if I don't want to do it, then I'll just refuse orders. The chief of staff of IDF is refusing orders to obey the government. It's really insane. And the people that say Israel runs the world, Israel can't run itself right now. There's so much internal conflict right now. And what that's done is also it's divided the nation. I mean, the nation, half of them will stand with the army. If the chief of staff is saying the army shouldn't do it, half of them will stand with the government. And it's really creating quite chaos. And I find it remarkable that 20 years ago, almost to the day, Israel disengaged from Gaza.
Yep.
And now 20 years later, we see what a disastrous mistake it was to give up the land of Israel to any other nation. And now 20 years later, we're being called to conquer Gaza, to liberate Gaza, to go in again. And it's so dangerous, apparently, that the chief of staff is saying, I'm out. No, thank you.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my feeling when you said that, I was like, maybe Jeremy's right. I don't think so. Why did I not think so? Because Israel's deep state makes America's deep state look shallow. Really, I
always thought it was the other way around.
Oh, no.
You think it's deep?
Yeah,
deep.
Israel's deep state goes...
No, but I think it's easier to fix this one.
Well, there's less people involved.
Without getting too involved in the details of it, Israel's deep state goes back to biblical times. Okay, it really does. It goes back to like the Erev Rav in the Exodus. And I'm not saying who's an Erev Rav and who's not, and I'm not getting into that whole thing.
You might have to explain what an Erev Rav is.
Well, that's why I didn't want to get into the whole thing.
But now you said it.
But let's just put it, there is an ideological subset within the nation of Israel that is constantly seeking and yearning for Israel to be a state like all other, to be loved by the world, and that is their deepest motivational reason of everything that they do. Which is why we have United Nations representatives from Israel that feel like they're more representing the United Nations to Israel than representing Israel to the United Nations. That's the Supreme Court of Israel. It's just yearning for the legitimacy, in the eyes of the International Criminal Court. Why do you think they're always cooperating with that? Because they're so titillated and excited. But why doesn't Israel leave the United Nations and see what the farce and the joke the United Nations is? Why don't we leave? Because there's this group in the deep state that needs this international recognition, that wants to put their faith in the nations of the world rather than in the word of God. Mm-hmm. And so that's a deeper part of the...
Would you say that? Or go ahead, Jeremy.
I'm just saying, you brought up the United Nations. What's happening in the United Nations now is just absolutely atrocious. First of all, they're blaming Israel for starving the Gazans. And they just now came out with a UN report saying that 88% of its trucks that go into Gaza have been looted by the Hamas. 88%. So who is starving the Gazans? The Hamas obviously are. But now so much damage has been done over the last few weeks where Israel is starving. And now it's just proven to be absolutely false. And at the same time, it's just remarkable that the brother of Eviatar David, a hostage in Gaza, who was filmed like a skeleton digging his own grave on the 9th of Av, like the chutzpah of the Hamas that released that video, that was brought before the United Nations Security Council. And here you actually see targeted, purposeful starvation, and the Security Council did nothing. They didn't even condemn the Hamas.
Yeah, I actually heard that a take on it, that why did Hamas release that on the 9th of Av? Release that in the backdrop of these accusations against Israel to show their ideological domination of the world, that they can release this and there will not be a word said. It won't be picked up by the mainstream media. It won't be used to point at them.
On the cover of Time magazine and the New York Times.
It's going to be totally ignored, and it's just like so demoralizing to Jews and to Israel. Like, are we really on our own here in the world in this movement, international movement of such vitriol and hate that they're willfully blinding themselves to what's really happening here to pile on Israel? It's like there's vultures circling the Jewish state, smelling blood, seeing that we're all alone, and just going in one after the other. That's what it feels like here.
Well, I'll tell you, Prime Minister Netanyahu just came out with, I thought, quite a remarkable video exactly about the power of lies against Israel and how old it is. Really, you should watch this.
We're preceded by horrible vilifications. The lies that were leveled against the Jews spread around the globe. We were poisoning the wells. We were carriers of disease. We slaughtered Christian children in order to drink their blood. And this spread from country to country and created massacre after massacre, culminating in the worst massacre of them all, the Holocaust, in which 6 million innocent Jews were led to the slaughter. Today, the Jewish state is facing similar vilifications. They lie about us. They say that we're deliberately starving Palestinian children. That's a barefaced lie. Since the beginning of the war, we have let in almost 2 million tons of food. 2 million tons of food for Palestinian civilians, Palestinian children. That's been our policy.
I mean, what you see there is that there is an ancient hatred that crosses denominations, crosses religions, and we're just living through the newest version of the hatred right now. And that really is the question. A war against the Jew in some ways is really a war against God. And that's what we're saying. That's why it's coming from the woke left, and that's why it's coming from the woke right. Ultimately, it's actually an attack on God. And these lies and these blood libels, they're just spreading everywhere. Now the UN's coming back saying, oh, by the way, what we've said that's been spread around the world now for the last few weeks, oh, that was a mistake. Whoops. And no one picked that up, of course.
Well, nobody does. Between the BBC and all of the main leaders of information around the world, all are broadcasting these images and trying to convince the world of something. And then the little blip, 3 weeks later, oh, sorry, we had that wrong. Of course, that doesn't make the wave. Everybody's already been convinced that Israel is a, to quote some people that we're not going to say their names, demonic state. No, they've convinced the world of this reality that they think exists. They're painting a picture that doesn't exist.
What I've noticed too is
totally
like
backwards.
the main players that are touting demonization of Israel and the ones that have millions and millions of views, they don't come here. Like they literally refuse to come to Israel, to go to Gaza, they go to the border. They don't interview. I've seen none of these people interviewing Israeli soldiers or anybody like closely connected to what's actually going on. I want to build on
what...
what...
But even if they did come here, by the way, Luke, I'm not sure that would matter. When you have what you deeply believe from a theological, foundational perspective, you see what you want to see. You hear what you want to hear.
Yeah. If you have your eyes wide open, you can see the beauty of the land of Israel. But if you come here with a predetermined hatred, then you can also, like it's a lens, you can see the land through that as well. I want to build off what Jeremy was talking about for a second, just before we move on from the topic of Gaza. 88% of the UN's aid has been looted. That just to make that even a little more crazy, in the month of June, 1,043 of their aid trucks were looted. 47 made it to the correct destination. So
who's the bad guys? Real quick,
they're failing.
Israel's the bad guys, and the DH. What is it called? The DHL. What is
the
it called?
GHF?
Yeah,
the Gaza Humanitarian
Not
Foundation.
The company.
Okay, so now the UN is calling for the GHF to be shut down.
Yeah,
because they're participating in the genocide, starvation of Gaza. Let's give their numbers. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has distributed 1,164,240 meals in Gaza yesterday. Okay, how many people are in Gaza? 2 million. That means they're all already, after a month of operating, they're reaching more than half the population just by themselves. And they're not the only people. Now there's aid being dropped from the sky. You have the UN attempting, just them by themselves distributing 1.2 million meals a day. To date, they've delivered 109 million meals. That's just since May 26th. And their food is reaching the intended destination, and it's not being looted by Hamas. I read a statistic that Hamas has made $500 million off of reselling the aid that they're stealing from the UN and other groups.
Is there any other war in the world where two countries are at war, two sides are at war, and one side is feeding the enemy country?
That's exactly the question everyone should be asking.
And you're still being demonized for it.
Exactly the question that we should be asking.
One of these, the hostages that was actually with Aviatar David in that exact tunnel, he said, I was there for 500 days with him. I know exactly what's going on. Right to the back left, there's a steel door that the Hamas are in, that they are eating fish and meat and fruits and vegetables and abundance that they're eating in front of Aviatar David. And he was, of course, forced to say in his video, they're giving me whatever they can. But of course, they have a barrel to his head, forcing him to dig his own grave. And that's the type of, it says in the book of Amos, you who turn justice into wormwood and cast righteousness to the ground, who call evil good and good evil, who put darkness for light and light for darkness, who put bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. That is literally, I can't think of a time in my adult life where evil is being positioned as good in such a way that is it's impossible. It's difficult for any rational, intellectually honest person to see the jihad of October 7th and the murder and the rape and the torture. I just saw a minute of one of the videos from October 7th on the 9th of Av, just to allow myself to get back in there. And they're now trying to reward them with a state at the expense of Israel that's gone to greater lengths. I mean, we're seeing right now, God is creating a situation where people get to decide for themselves which side they're going to stand on, light or darkness. That's what's happening.
You know, I used to think growing up that what could be more evil than Nazis? Like that was, to me, that was like the greatest manifestation of evil on earth. But Nazis, they tried to hide their atrocities. They tried to hide their murdering Jews. And the Hamas are making propaganda videos of Jews digging their own graves and starving in tunnels. It's like a higher, more refined level of evil. And I just saw this video of these Hamas terrorists saying, yeah, we're going after the Jews, but then we're going to go after the Christians. It's a matter of us to take over the entire world. Watch this.
والله لو أخرجنا اليهود من فلسطين لو أخرجناهم من فلسطين وأخرجناهم من بيت المقدس دون أن يسلموا ولو ذهبوا آخر العالم سنلاحقهم وسندعوهم إلى الإسلام وندعو بوجه الإسلام وندعو جميع النصارى للإسلام نعم نعم.
So what the world doesn't see is that for whatever reason, Jews and Christians, for some reason, are being put right now in the same boat. They're not saying we're going to attack every Hindu, we're attacking every Buddhist. It's specifically targeting Jews and Christians. That's a wake-up call. Yeah. You know, I realize with the Western world, every country in America, Canada, all of Europe, all of us right now are under attack, and Israel just happens to be on the front lines. And if the world doesn't wake up soon, they're going to wake up with Hamas in their backyard.
Let me ask you guys, as Christians, is there anything at all that you have seen that has caused you pause? And the reason I ask this is because I can't help but I can't get out of my mind Ambassador Huckabee, who is such a stalwart, unwavering friend of Israel and the Jewish people. And he even bought into it and said, and turned against Israel for like a good 10 minutes there, if you remember, about the church being burned down and about the visas. And I'm like, wow, if he is even wavering here, clearly there's some sort of spiritual force that is a compulsion, that is alluring, that is enticing, even for the friends of Israel. To turn against us.
Well, I think a good example is the number of pastors who are now coming out publicly. I mean, you showed us another video right before we started recording.
Listen to what this guy said.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, got to bless Israel or God won't bless you. Now, here's the thing. The modern day nation of Israel is not a lucky rabbit's foot. As long as you rub it, God will be good to you. It doesn't work that way. But not only that, the Bible simply does not say that at all. The Bible does not say anywhere in the Bible to bless Israel, yet especially the modern day nation of Israel. We had some visitors just last week that were down here for vacation, and that was one of their concerns, that the church that they're in is teaching political Zionism, and they're telling Christians that we have to support war in Iran, and they're teaching hatred as a commandment of man.
But I mean, that's not the only example. There's a lot of pastors publicly preaching from their pulpits in their churches, do not support Israel. The Bible does not say to support the modern state of Israel. The Jews today are not the same Jews of the Bible. Like this, it's a dangerous new level. We used to talk about new replacement theology, new anti-Semitism. Like there's another one now. The Jews of today, the modern state of Israel is not the same Israel from the Bible. You know, the Bible does not say to support the Jews of today. It's scary. Like it's very scary that this is being preached publicly from the pulpits now, and millions of Christians are following suit.
I see two things here. There's a major battle, obviously. Israel's been fighting for 2 years, and the world is at a ruckus, and there's things shifting radically. But what are these shifts causing to happen? Two things that I think are really incredible because of the war that brings peace, right? It's a Jewish idea that something is being rectified in the world. War is not good, but there is something that happens. There's usually, and it ends usually with peace. If the war finishes, then it's peace, right? I see what's happening around the world in declaring a Palestinian state, right? Of the whole world's trying to create this statehood, right? Of exactly in opposition to what's actually happening on the ground. The Jewish people are coming back, they're establishing their homeland, and yet the whole world's trying to disprove and discredit. And but what is that doing? It could be, in reality, driving Israel right now to actually do exactly that, declare the state of Israel in opposition. The only thing that can hold back this massive pressure to say that the biblical heartland of Israel is now a Palestinian state, and we're going to make you do it. UN Security Council.
So the UN's meeting in September. So you're talking about 1 month from now. A bunch of nations are going. I think it'll be a lot more than who. I think it's 5 or 6 that have already signed up to recognize the Palestinian state. Yeah. I think in another month there'll be quite a lot more than 6. Yeah. And if the UN General Assembly meets, obviously they can't force Israel to have a Palestinian state. Maybe the Israel could bow to pressure. Like there are ways, but legally speaking, that it doesn't carry weight. But you're saying, when this happens, it could push Israel to the point.
I'm saying Israel may need to preempt this.
Right.
Well, I would say that Israel is really at fault. Meaning, why have we not declared sovereignty over Judea and Samaria yet? What are we waiting for? Why are we waiting 2 years to now liberate Gaza? Why didn't we do that on October 10th? Why didn't we conquer and make a decisive move from the very beginning? So the world is looking around, and really like what you're saying, it's forcing us to actually be who we were always meant to be.
The second thing that I want to say is that's one obvious point that I think is pressuring Israel to make some major moves toward sovereignty. And I think there's a good possibility that we will be there by September only because the world is forcing it. They're forcing it in a backwards libel-like way of lies and propaganda. Israel has to act. It's in a position that it has to do something, and they're going to do it. The other second thing is it's being forced. It's like Jeremy just said. Christians around the world are having to make a decision right now. Do we stand with Israel? Do we not? It's being forced now. You can't just stand on the fence anymore. And so I think this opposition... Are we going to
play your music video?
I believe, right?
People don't even know it's the same guy, you know?
It's the only thing that consistently makes me cry every time I watch this.
But it literally is it's a point. Israel's being forced into something right now. They have to make a decision. People around the world are being forced into something. It's a forcing of good and truth in Israel that has to prevail. In order for this war to end, that has to prevail. For the nations, there's a testing now, just like in what's happening in Israel. There's usually a broader expression of that, and that's very true. What's happening now, the broader thing of what's happening in Israel on the mass scale is nations are also in this massive movement right now. They have to make a decision. Well, the world is going nuts, and it's the stupidest thing you could possibly do right now is on a physical level. I stand with that tiny little place in Israel. I do, and I don't care what the rest of the world says. I'm standing.
Yeah,
it's not even the safe thing.
It's not the smart thing to do.
Smart. When
Let's talk about what's going on behind the scenes of sovereignty, because from the surface you could say there's not support from the government of Israel for sovereignty, but behind the scenes maybe there is. Last week we talked about the finance ministries investing tens of millions of dollars into the roads in Judea and Samaria. We work a lot with the farms in Judea and Samaria, and without getting into too many details, we've helped thousands of acres of new Jewish farms and existing farms get stabilized and helping them build their infrastructure and stuff just in the last month or two. And what a lot of the farmers are saying is that there is support from the government for their farms.
That's like breaking news, by the way, Luke.
Well, I think we've mentioned it before, right? But I mean,
it's like breaking the fact that there's an underground movement.
There's really good people in the government who are investing in Judea and Samaria. And then the third thing, which maybe you can talk about, Josh, is this is historic. Mike Johnson is the most senior American government official to ever step foot across the Green Line in Judea and Samaria. And not only did he, because you can leave the airport and you can get on Highway 5 and you can drive straight into Ariel, and it's pretty easy. It's a 4-lane highway, right? And you can get a photo op and then go back to the airport. He did that. I mean, it wasn't just a photo op. It was very important. But then he went to Shiloh, which is in the heart of Judea and Samaria. There's no way to get there except by helicopter or by driving Highway 60 or maybe from the Jordan Valley, like Highway 90. That's the only way. And not only did he go, but he met the Prime Minister of Israel, and they had dinner in Shiloh.
And the ambassador.
Ambassador Huckabee. To me, the fact that, because we've had other officials go to the Saigot Winery in the past, and that's also just like a couple-minute drive from Jerusalem, to the fact that they actually went to Shiloh is pretty significant to me.
Yeah. Well, to put it in Ambassador Huckabee's words, he said this is an historic moment. Like he recognized it, that this is huge. I believe, just like Huckabee, that we're living in historic moments, and that was one of them right there. The Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, just on Monday, we're talking about just happened. He comes to Shiloh And this is the first ever official visit by a U.S. Speaker of the House to Judea and Samaria, the ancient biblical heartland of Israel.
People should know,
Huge
Speaker of the House is the third in line to the president.
This is a
or
quote
second
from
in line to the president.
2 heartbeats away from the presidency.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. This is a quote from him. He says, Judea and Samaria. I got to stop there. The Speaker of the House is saying he's not using propaganda language that was created in 1960s to delegitimize the state of Israel. He's using biblical language,
which even right-wing nationalist Jews in Israel don't use because they want to be considered in the mainstream Overton window. So they themselves don't use it, and he does.
He also didn't say anything about occupation either. He said the opposite. He actually said the opposite. He said this. I'll just start to quote here. I just had to stop there. It's too powerful. He understands Israel from a biblical perspective. He's an amazing man. Judea and Samaria are the front lines of the state of Israel and must remain an integral part of it. You can't, he just said sovereignty has to happen here.
We have a window right now that Israel could make history, be bold, do something decisive in Gaza, in Judea and Samaria. We have the backing of America. We have an opportunity to just do what's right. And if we miss this window, who knows what's going to come in the next election?
We know what's going to come. We see the direction. We see the trajectory of even old school allies in America in the government. Charlie Kirk just had on his, whatever the
Gen Z,
the Gen Z's and hearing the direction that they're all going in against Israel. This is, if we're going to play that game of deciding what we do and timing it based on American administrations, which I never like to begin with. But if we're going to play that game and see what awaits us, doesn't matter if it's Alexandria or Ocasio-Cortez or Charlie Kirk or, the vice president of the United States. It's not going to be ever as easy as it is right now for us to do what we need to do.
What do you, from an Israeli's perspective, what do you guys think behind the scenes? Because to me, when I see that, because Bibi, you just never know kind of where he's at. He seems like he goes back and forth his entire career. Now he's having dinner in Shiloh with the Speaker of the House. That also feels significant to me, not just in the third highest power from America, but the highest level in Israel.
I've got to add to this because you're exactly on this. He after his initial quote, he followed that up with, even if the whole world thinks otherwise, we stand with you.
This is Mike Johnson.
Mike Johnson. He followed his quote up about, basically, if I was to firm it up, this is Jewish ancestral homeland. And then he followed up, even if everybody else doesn't think so, we stand with you.
It's so rare in the world. It's so rare in the world that we have actual leaders, where it's become almost that there's a conflation between the idea of being elected. You're elected to represent your constituency.
Yeah.
Right. And as opposed to, so whatever your constituency thinks, put the finger to the wind, hear what they're saying, and just say whatever it is they're saying like a parrot. Right. As opposed to what real leadership is supposed to be, where you say, you asked me to be the leader here. You put me in charge. I'm going to do what I believe is right. And if you don't like it, then choose another leader. Mm-hmm. Right. And he's actually saying, this is the truth. It doesn't matter if my constituency, if the whole world believes otherwise, this is where I stand.
To me,
it's
it feels
rare to see that nowadays.
To me, it feels like Israel's ready. Not all of Israel, but a lot of Israel is really the people of Israel. And then it almost feels like that the leadership is holding them back. I don't know. What do you think, Jeremy? What's happening what do you feel from Netanyahu and the highest levels of leadership in Israel in regards to
I think that Israel was always kind of tiptoeing between, should there be 2 states? Should there not be 2 states? Should there be a Palestinian state? Should there not be a Palestinian state? And October 7th and this 2-year war has proven never give up the land of Israel. Never. It will never turn out good. Imagine if, God forbid, there was another Hamas country in the mountains of Samaria, in the mountains of Judea. Gaza's on the coastline on sand. It's relatively small. It's relatively on the side of Israel. There would be the heartland of Israel in giant mountains and valleys. It would be impossible to go to war there. And so the vast majority of Israelis now, they would never even consider now accepting a Palestinian state. And so I feel like Netanyahu is slowly but surely taking steps, meeting with Johnson in Shiloh. It's a step in the right direction.
And the Knesset did vote against the creation of a unilateral Palestinian state
with a vast
last
majority.
year. Yeah, with over 100 votes for it, I think.
Right. I also think Mark Zell, he's the chair of the Republicans, oversees Israel. He basically says, in his view, that, and you guys know him, he believes that this was a statement directly from the Trump administration. Taking it a step further, to have the speaker, I mean, Trump could have intervened if he said, okay, don't get into that. No, well, he would have had to gone along with the president. So President Trump was going along with this whole thing, and their meeting in Shiloh, in his thoughts, this was a validation from President Trump himself of Jewish rights to the ancient homeland.
So what are we waiting for? We literally must declare sovereignty within the next year, or we're going to lose this opportunity.
Well, my thought is you only have till September before the whole world decides otherwise.
Well, there you go.
We got 1 month. I mean, Likud, the ministers in the government all voted for it. They voted to push the Knesset to sovereignty very quickly.
Can I just say something? Because what's the opposition? I feel like this is some sort of cartoon thing that we're, in some ways, I feel like it's a little cartoonish. Speaker Johnson, the most sophisticated, God-honoring leader with such a, when you're with him, you see him, he is like a giant. He's the most well-spoken person you've ever heard speak in your life. He demands respect. And he says some of the most profound things in alignment with biblical and historic justice. He's speaking truth. And on the other side, you have these jokers. And I don't mean to be just, obviously I have a bias here, but literally this is like a cartoon moment here where this incredibly justice man speaks with such truth. And then you have Al Jazeera on the other side saying Johnson becomes the highest ranking official to visit the illegal settlements, occupied Palestinian territory. And then the Palestinian foreign minister says the ministry affirms that all settlement activity is invalid and illegal.
Wait, what ministry are you talking about?
Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Oh, the Palestinian.
Yeah, it's like a joke. I'm like, who is the Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs anyway? Yeah. He's probably some terrorist that got let out of some jail cell 5 years ago.
Probably.
No, for sure. But let me just finish. He says, he uses all the words too. Settlement activity, the illegal, all this stuff is invalid and illegal and undermines the opportunity to implement the two-state solution and achieve peace. Like, yeah, right.
It's so cynical. It's so cynical.
See what I'm saying about this like cartoon thing that's trying, but yet the
also
whole world is living in this like ridiculous.
It makes me laugh whenever anyone talks about undermining the opportunity or the feasibility of the two-state solution. I'm like,
it's like,
what rock have you been hiding under for the last 10 years?
Foreign Minister Palestine.
There's been no feasibility for a Palestinian state for at least a decade, and definitely not since October 7th.
When you say it's illegal, who are you talking? You're talking to the third most powerful man in the world, and you're telling him what's legal?
Who's defined what legal is? Just a bunch of dudes from Al Jazeera. They're just saying words. That's why Israel has to go back to the fundamentals.
That's right.
This is the biblical homeland. We are the indigenous Jews from Judea. Shiloh is where the tabernacle stood. This belongs to Israel, period. And if we can just say that, I feel like the world would respect us. But because we keep on tiptoeing through tulips, trying to I don't even know what we're trying to do. I don't know what we're trying to do in Gaza. We're occupying it, but we're not liberating. We're liberating. We're not declaring sovereignty. So we're confusing the world, and the world is coming out against us. And perhaps it is to pressure Israel to finally do what it needs to do.
Yeah. But there's one thing for sure. You have Speaker Mike Johnson with Israel completely. I'll quote this and just summing up his trip here. He said, today, the state of Israel and the Jewish people around the world are facing serious threats. It is our moral duty to stand by our democratic sister. As terrorism and the vile anti-Semitic ideology threaten Western civilization, Israel must know that when America said never again, we meant it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he understands what's going on, and he's here to stand.
Exactly. There's a story I think it's important to talk about, and it's kind of something. It's one of those stories you don't want to talk about it and you want to avoid it, but it's getting to be so big in the news now. And one of those unnamed individuals we agreed not to mention on the show had him on a second time for a 2-hour interview yesterday. But there's this guy. Retired from the U.S. military, served in the Green Beret. He's an officer in the military for 25 years, or he served in the military for 25 years. His name's Tony Aguilar. He's making a PR tour now around the world, mostly in the United States, and millions, if not tens of millions of people are watching him. and he's being deemed as a whistleblower and a hero by the world because he worked with the GHF in Gaza for a couple of weeks, and then he left. Well, and I just want to tell you the details because I think it's important to know the truth. And so he signed up after he retired from the military earlier this year. He signed up to work with one of the security contractors that's providing security for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, right? So he's going to Gaza to help with the aid distribution. He goes there, I think, May 24th or 26th, something like that. And then on June 13th, he said his account is he resigned out of protest because of the mismanagement, the poor leadership, and he witnessed war crimes, including children being intentionally shot by the IDF and I think GHF too, and just like awful things. Right now, he's going around claiming that GHF is a fraud and they're starving Gazans, they're participating in genocide, the IDF's committing war crimes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but I'm just going to detail for you guys the problems with the story, okay? The security contractor, I think it's UG Solutions, that he worked for, says they fired him. And there's actually, we'll show you guys on the screen, we'll link it down below and all that kind of stuff. They fired him for disruptive and confrontational behavior, raising the temperature of the operations, unprofessional behavior, creating a hostile work environment, basically. And they even said we moved him around to a couple of the different sites. Didn't work out. We fired him, right? And you can see the screenshot of that conversation. After he was fired and resigned, there's more proof of him begging to be rehired by the leadership and them refusing. And then he started threatening them, saying, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. I can be your worst nightmare. They refused. And now he's being their worst nightmare by going around the world claiming that they're a fraud and they're participating in war crimes, right? So that's kind of the proof. And again, we'll show it all to you guys. And this could be an hour-long deal to talk about this because it's so awful. But I'm giving you this short version. Here's the questions I would just ask you guys to ask yourself, because you are seeing these clips. You're seeing them on all over social media of this guy. Like, he's popping up everywhere. Millions of people watching him. He's on every news network and podcaster in America. Questions are, why would you beg to be rehired from the organization where you either resigned from or you're fired from? Either way, like, why would you try to go back to that organization, right? Why would you beg to be rehired if you experienced war crimes while you were there and the whole organization's a fraud? And like, why would you beg to be brought back? He spent like 2.5, 3 weeks total before he was fired. And some of that time he was not even in Gaza. So the other question is, how are you an expert after only spending a few days working there? And many of his claims are debunked with actual evidence of his claim, even like to the point he wrote a memo and they actually went into the metadata and proved that he backdated the memo a month to claim that it was written like a month before. It's just a lot of crazy stuff. So I wanted to give you guys those tools to know, because you're seeing these crazy stories, like crazy stories that are just outright lies of people saying, I was there, I have the proof, Israel's committing war crimes or committing genocide. Also the whole thing that, like they're starving the people of Gaza. It's just all a lie. And then like you were saying, Jeremy.
Have you seen the cover of Time Magazine?
Yeah.
Time Magazine was just exposed that they just totally faked a picture where they're actually taking a picture of the photographer, of the people that are like asking the people to look as if they're starving with their pants coming out. So there is a campaign of literally blood libels, just lies about Israel. It's not new, but the one solace that I have is that as we move closer to a new stage in history, as we move closer towards the end of these days, lies will look like truths and truths will look like lies.
And that's what the Bible says,
so all of the lies are coming out now and people are taking it as truth. And the only clear path, the only thing that can bring clarity and truth is to actually hold on to Scripture, hold on to the Tanakh, hold on to the Hebrew Bible, because that's the only thing with all the lies. I mean, who knows? We haven't even started really that much with AI, but eventually it will be indistinguishable. And so many lies will be able to be poured out about Israel. And so the one truth that we have is reality and the Bible. And thank God, all of that is coming to pass today.
My overwhelming response to all this is, Luke, is weakness. Just plain weakness. These are supposed to be the best of American military. These are all special ops guys, the GHF, whole thing is supposed to be the best of our American teams. That is, people, it's a contractor deal, but these are the best of soldiers that they're hiring on for a mass amount of money to come in and do this job. And they themselves, the best of our Americans, special ops kind of guys who spent 20 years in special forces, Green Berets, are coming into Gaza and they can't do anything. They're sitting behind the fence like a bunch of scared guys trying to hand out food. I'm like, what in the world?
Well, to be fair, they are
thing?
doing a good job, the organization.
No, but I'm just saying, where's the strength?
Right.
Go smack into this town. The strength does not say bring the trucks in and let them get looted. Like that.
Well, that's the UN. Yeah.
Well, yeah, of course the UN's like that. But I'm saying bring the truck straight into downtown
I guess the other question
Gaza
to go back to what Jeremy's saying too is I'm always drawn to explain, yes, they are feeding the people of Gaza. They're doing a good job. This is how many meals, that's my natural tendency. And I have to remind myself, like you were saying, Jeremy, why is Israel expected to feed the people of Gaza? Just ask yourself that. And honestly, there's not a good answer to that question.
Well, if we would have just actually put a siege on Gaza from day one, like every other war throughout history, which is also legal according to international law, then maybe this war would have been over in a few days.
You're right.
Well, I mean, I don't know if it would have been over in a few days. A few days is too long. We spoke about this before, that from a Machiavellian perspective, where he talks about the art of war, when you do something that is perceived in the eyes of the world as good, you're supposed to drag it out over time. And when you do it, something that will be perceived in the eyes of the world as bad, then you do it quickly. To siege the people of God, I don't think it's also something we don't want to do, because there are likely individuals within Gaza that are innocent. We should try to defend even those unique individuals. So why don't we just do what needs to be? You asked Luke before the show started, you're looking at Eviatar David, like, how is the world not up in arms about that? And I think the answer is simple, because we, the nation of Israel, aren't up in arms about that. Why would the world be righteously indignant about something that we as the nation of Israel, we should be the ones that are righteously indignant. And if we're not, if we're so jaded and beaten down that we just accept this with our heads down in an abstract intellectual way, then what do we expect from the world? I think we have to really look within and be righteously indignant in a biblical way. And to go in, get the I've said this before, top 10 Hamas prisoners of terrorists in our prison and execute them in a humiliating way, broadcast to all of Gaza, and say this is going to happen to every member of Hamas tomorrow if you don't release all of our hostages now. That's the only thing that works. But if we're going to do this thing and we're even siege and we're not letting the electricity in, just go in with righteous indignation and fury. And maybe the world's not going to love us, but at least they'll respect us. And right now they don't even respect us because we're willing to just, talk in an abstract way. I'm listening to different rabbis and political leaders about October 7th. And I'm honestly, when my children have to run into a safe room and I see my son putting his hands over his ears and my daughter shivering, I'm embarrassed. I feel like a failure in the eyes of my children. They look at me like, Abba, how could you let this be? We have to not allow this to be, and the world will respect that. Right now, there's no respect for Israel because we're just so beaten down and jaded.
I'll tell you, when I watched the presentation at the UN Security Council talking about the starvation of the hostages, and it's like the world knows. Once Israel attacked Iran, countries were saying Israel's doing our dirty work. The world knows what Hamas is. The world knows what evil is. And it's as if we're trying to convince the world that the Hamas is bad. The world knows if we would have just acted with righteous indignation and done what needed to be done, the world would have been quiet. The world would have respected us. But because we're delivering them food and we're trying to go out there, or we're tiptoeing through tulips in order, it's just like we are losing world opinion because we're not doing what's right and what's moral. In this week's Torah portion, it literally says, follow the Torah, because it will be what the world looks at and says, wow, what a wise and great nation, because you're following the Torah. That's the wisdom. Is anyone consulting? What is the Torah perspective of how to go to war against this evil? It's definitely not delivering them food and aid and tiptoeing through tulips. It's to eviscerate the Hamas, to just destroy the evil from its root. That's what needs to be done.
This Bible says if you allow them to stay in the land, they will be thorns in your eyes. That's literally what they are. I will do to you what I would have done to them. That is what the Bible, and we have let them stay in the land. We're constantly thinking, there's a backdrop in our heads, a narrative that's constantly going, what would the world think about this? What would the world say? And I think it's natural for human beings to think that way. We just need to recalibrate it from what would the world say to the God of Israel, who has redeemed us throughout history, that has protected us, that has kept true to every single promise, that has allowed us to survive despite the fact that we're the fewest among the nations, that we lack the most basic survival mechanisms that any nation has. The miracle of our existence is only because of him. What does he think of us? Forget what the world thinks of us. We should be so focused on that we don't think about the other stuff.
Yeah. Well, I want to just share some good news based on that, because the first Haredi ultra-Orthodox battalion, called the Hasmoneans, named after the Maccabees, just completed their first round of advanced training, 7 months. They finished off at the Kotel, and I saw this video where you see the soldiers and you see their families and you see ultra-Orthodox Jews that are so committed to the Torah, and they're now integrating for the first time into the IDF, and it is slowly but surely becoming a resurrected army of King David that will actually try to live and operate by the Torah. Because until we actually establish the Torah as our values and God as our guide for what's moral and what's not, we're just going to be running around in circles, and we're never going to be successful.
That's right. And it's such good news that people need to hang on to that. They need to hang on to the truth, because like you're saying, and the Bible talks about it. And the lies will be accepted as truth, and the truth as lies. Everything will be mixed up, and it's just accelerating more and more and more. It's just getting faster, and it's getting worse, and it's getting more confusing and complex. And more than ever, I think you said it well, Jeremy. People need to hold on to Scripture. They need to hold on to talking about the commandment to the Israelites to not allow their enemies to live in the land. And obviously, people are thinking, well, what does that mean? Are you saying kick all the Arabs out of the land? Someone asked me once if there was a place for the Arabs, those in Judea and Samaria, those in Gaza, to live in Israel. And I said, honestly, I think it comes down to whether or not they could ever align themselves with the God of Abraham. If they could actually align themselves with the God of Abraham and the covenant of Abraham, meaning God's covenant to the Jewish people, to the covenant with the land and with the people forever. And if they could acknowledge that and align themselves with that, then yes, maybe there is a place for them in the land, but not otherwise. Like, if you don't align yourself with the God of Abraham, then there is no place for you here in this land. And I think that's we have to align ourselves with the God of Abraham. Whether you're in America, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in Norway, wherever you are, you have to align yourself with the God of Abraham and the covenant that God made with a land and a people. And I think that's so important. So guys, hold on to truth more than ever. It's super important. Keep fighting, keep standing, no matter what the world says, no matter what the world does. It's not going to be the safe place. It's not going to be the easy place, but keep standing for God's kingdom. That's our encouragement for you guys this week. And remember, there is good happening in the land of Israel. There is beauty here. And you guys should come see it for yourself. Come visit us. Come visit Ari and Jeremy. The invitation is always there. You're always welcome. Guys, make sure to check out Blessed by Israel. That's blessedbyisrael.com. The link will be in the description below to purchase beautiful boutique products. It's the next best thing from coming here yourself from the land of Israel. And make sure to find out about the Land of Israel Network. We were all together on the fellowship this week, and that was like so awesome. It was like 400 or 500 people or something like that. That was amazing. So guys, you got to get on the fellowship every Sunday, right? People can join in from all over the world. We'll put the link for that in the description below, thelandofisrael.com. As always, stop listening to the lies and propaganda and connect with the truth of what's happening here in Israel. We'll be back very soon here at the Israel Guys.